Hi all. If you're a college student and you have a paper that's due that has to be written in APA formatting, you're in luck because this video outlines those most important parts toward writing a paper in APA format from the student version. There are two different types of APA formats we have available. We have an academic type format that we use to submit journal articles, and then we have one for student papers. Now, the APA manual is ridiculously long. We can't cover all of the requirements, but what we're going to talk about in this video are those most important elements of a well-written APA formatted paper that are going to not only help ensure you get all the points that are associated in that paper with writing a well-organized APA formatted manuscript, but it's also going to help us become better writers because we're going to be more well-organized and more thorough in articulating our thoughts. Let's get into it. So the first page in any paper, whether it's an academic, a journal submission, or a student paper, should be that title page. Before we get started, it's important we remember that regardless of whether we're talking about headers, a running head, a title, or references page, everything in the paper should be in Times New Roman, 12-point font, double-spaced, and we're using 1-inch margins all the way around. If we aren't doing all of that across the entire paper, we immediately start to stand out. If we start playing with the margins or start playing with 13-point Times New Roman font, what inevitably happens is it comes across to the professor, like myself, as we're trying to cheat the system. We're trying to find ways to make this paper that is currently 2.5 pages turn into something that's 3 full pages long. That will hurt us in the long run. At the same time, keeping in mind that double-spaced requirement. Now, double spacing can be kind of a pain in Microsoft Word, and once in a while, we're going to see these extra spaces that we didn't intend to be there, but it's almost a glitch in Microsoft Word. The easiest thing we can do is once we're done writing a manuscript, just go through the whole thing, highlight everything, click on that paragraph tab, and at the very bottom, there is something that says basically remove extra spacing. That helps ensure that we don't have any of that extra spacing throughout. Now keep in mind, even between the different sections of the paper, we should be making sure that we stick to only double spaced. So we're not doing double, triple, quadruple spacing to, again, try to stretch the length of the paper or to try to distinguish sections. That's what headers are for. Let's go back to that title page. What we don't need anymore is a running head in a student version type paper. We don't need a running head. All we need is a page number, Times New Roman 12-point font, in the upper right-hand corner. So it's just going to be number 1, upper right-hand corner. Then we tab down 3 or 4 spaces. We bold and center the title. We can make the title as simple as whatever the assignment is titled, or we can come up with a title related to that assignment. Bolding, titling, and then capitalizing the first keyword in each word of that title. We can see from the example, not every word is capitalized, but generally the most important words are going to be capitalized. We tab down, that's where we get into our own name, our affiliation, the course, the professor, and the date. These are all the requirements of the title page in a student paper. When we get to page 2, we don't include introduction like we may have done in high school. Instead, we can basically just copy that title from page 1 and paste it at the top of page 2. We don't need to include introduction. we just get into writing. Now, let's talk about paragraphs for a second and the difference between paragraphs and bullet points or incomplete thoughts. A paragraph should be at least 4 to 5, maybe even 6 or 7 sentences long. And our paragraph should be informed by whatever that first sentence is of the paragraph. So let's go over to the assignment description and that corresponding rubric. The great thing about an assignment description and the rubric is it serves as a guide for us to let us know what are the different sections we need to be talking about in this paper. So let's take, for example, we're writing a paper that's a reflection of what we learned in the previous week or during the previous class period. So we're supposed to highlight our 3 biggest takeaways. So if we're taking this paper on developing humility in leaders and moving into our discussion about our takeaways, we might create a header titled 3 Takeaways from Class, which as a level 1 header is centered and bolded with the first letter in each word capitalized. We introduce the topic and then move down into our level 2 headers, which are subsequently left aligned and still bolded and capitalized. For each section, we space down, indent, and introduce the new paragraph using something along the lines of, the first takeaway I had was, and then for the remainder of that paragraph, we should be working hard to come up with another 3 or 4 or 5 sentences that expand on this idea. So if the first thing we learned from the lecture was the importance of understanding something related to business management, okay, well, let's be more specific. What specifically about that resonated with you? Why did it resonate with you? Do you have a particular experience or interest in this area as it relates to your own career? What we're doing here is expanding on and providing a complete thought. To an extent, we're defending our idea about why this was an important takeaway for us. We should be doing this throughout the manuscript, whether it's heading 1, heading 2, takeaway 1, takeaway 2, takeaway 3, whatever that first sentence is in the paragraph, expanding on it. Now, we certainly can have multiple paragraphs under an individual heading. That's perfectly acceptable. What we should be doing to guide and let us determine if we need to have multiple paragraphs is identify, well, what is everything that needs to fall under this heading? If we make a short list of bullet points and we outline, well, you know what, it looks like there are 2 or 3 different items I'd like to cover under this heading, we're likely going to have 2 or 3 different paragraphs, so on and so forth. Now, let's finish up the manuscript. When it comes to the references page, if we have citations, we have to have a references page. The references page can be very overwhelming, and there's an awful lot to think about depending on what the source is we are going to reference in the paper. But in its very simplest form, the easiest way we can go about organizing what a reference might look like is by identifying the author or authors of that manuscript, whether it's a book, a journal article, a web page. Who is the author? In parentheses, what is the date? What is the title? We're going to write that out in lowercase. What is the title of that? Next being, what is the publisher name? So whether it's a magazine title or a journal that we're citing, whether it's a company, an online company, what is the name of that organization? And then we might click and include the link to where we found this resource. So here is where we might copy and paste the web page that we found that. Keeping in mind, let's have those alphabetically organized alphabetically from A to Z. Keeping in mind, we're double spacing throughout, and we're indenting all the lines after the first line of each reference. By following these key requirements of APA formatting for a student paper, I guarantee you're going to score higher grades, and your writing is going to become much higher quality because of the completeness and thoroughness of each section of that paper. Hey team, if you found this video not only helpful but enjoyable, hit that like and subscribe to Time for Development button and continue investing in yourself.